Hi, everyone.
Hi, I'm Diana McAlintal,
I'm Nick Wagner.
and it's been a minute. It's been a while.
It's been a minute or two.
This is Team RCIA live, not on Tuesday, but on Thursday this week, because we have been traveling all over the place.
We have. Now we're home for a while, but we're leaving again, coming to Calgary. So if you're near Calgary, we're going to be there.
Next week, Calgary.
Next week, yes.
Is it snowing in Calgary?
Oh, gosh.
Anyways, so this week, there's been a lot of stuff, live viewing stuff online with the United States Catholic Conference of Catholic Bishops, the USCCB. They've been doing their fall gathering in the East Coast this weekend.
Yeah, and a really big deal for us at this one was their discussion and vote on the new translation of the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults.
So yes, as you know, this all of our ritual texts have been in progress for retranslation since 2000. We work really slowly, so we're finally getting around to the RCIA, the Rite of Christian Initiation of Adults. And so something on the bishops, and this is just United States, the United States bishops' agenda on Tuesday, was to vote on the next step for the translation of the RCIA. So some of you might have been watching that if you're a liturgy nerd like I am. And then I told Nick what happened because he's much smarter than I am than to be glued to the interwebs watching the bishops' conference meeting. So just maybe a little background on the translation process as I understand it. So every liturgical document, every liturgical ritual first comes out in Latin.
Yes.
So that keeps a lot of people in business who know Latin. So they are writing the texts in Latin, and then that text, called the Editio Typica, the typical edition, gets sent out to all of the different conferences of the different languages. And so for all of the countries in the world that speak English, primarily for their liturgical celebrations, their committee that helps them with translations is called the International Committee on English in the Liturgy, ICEL, I-C-E-L.
So just to go back a step, all the Latin texts were written in for the sacraments, were written in the 1960s and 70s, late 60s.
The revised sacraments from Vatican II.
From Vatican II, right. So when Vatican II said we have to revise the sacrament of baptism of infants, they didn't do it at Vatican II. They created a study commission that did it post-Vatican II, and it was promulgated, approved by Pope Paul VI. All of those texts, including the Roman Missal, which you all remember, we went through a big retranslation of that. But the Latin text was the same from the 1968 or 69, but the Latin text didn't change. Same with the RCIA. That text has been the same in Latin since 1972.
Yes. So we all have all these Latin texts. And then now ICEL, our English language committee, takes that Latin Editio Typica and writes out a first rough draft in English of the entire text itself, all of the notes and all of the rites, the texts of the rites itself.
So they did that in 1974 or something, the first draft of it. And that went around and was sort of used experimentally in lots of English-speaking countries. And then we got the final translation in 1986. And that's what we've all been using all this time. And that hasn't changed since 1986. So
we met somebody, I'm forgetting who it was recently. Oh, Johanna in Arizona, New Mexico. She says she has the purple edition that what's it called? The first rough draft of the English translation. You just said the word.
The first draft?
Oh, well, anyways, if you have a copy of that, we'd love to see it. Anyways, so ISIL sends out the first English translation, sends it out to all the bishops' conferences that speak English. And so in the US, the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops receives a copy of this first draft. Each bishop gets about a year or so to look it over and submit any kind of suggestions or recommendations for changes. And all of those recommendations go back to ISIL. And oh, by the way, that first draft is called the Green Book. You got to know all this church terminology. So Green Book, that Green Book gets sent out to the bishops. Bishops comment, send their comments back to ISIL. ISIL collates all of those comments and recommendations and comes up with a second draft. The second draft of the English proposed text is called the Gray Book. This is sounding like the Lord of the Rings. The Gray Book gets sent out again to all of the bishops in the English-speaking world. And they get several months or so to review it and either send more proposals for revision. And then just this last Tuesday, the U.S. bishops took this Gray Book and either voted yes or no on this Gray Book.
This is the Green Book and the Gray Book of the second translation, the revised translation. So we've had this process done once before that concluded in 1986. And now, just like the Roman Missal, we're doing it all over again with a retranslation or a new translation, starting with the Green Book, which was done a while ago. And as Diana said, the Gray Book was just approved at this last meeting yesterday? Or Tuesday.
So it was approved. There was, what was the vote?
It was 8,012 to 0.
217 yes, 3 no, and 3 abstained. And so now, typically what would happen is this now Gray Book, approved Gray Book, will go back to Rome, and Rome will either say, yes, we like it, or no, we don't like it. And then if they say yes, that will be the official new English translation of the RCIA.
No,
but there's a little catch.
There's a
for
catch.
This one.
Okay, so what happened with the first round, the book that we got in 1986, does not reflect the Editio Typica completely. And the reason for that is all the English-speaking countries, under the guidance of ISIL, said what in the Latin edition, what happens is every rite, the whole book has an introduction to it. Just like in the Roman Missal, we have the general introduction to the Roman Missal. Also, the RCI has an introduction in Latin called a praenatanda. That praenatanda, that introduction in the Latin edition is all in the first part, the introductory part of the book. What the English-speaking bishops around the world thought they had done some experimenting with the Rite, and they said it would be better if we broke up that introduction. And so we had the general introduction to the whole thing in the very beginning, and then we had the introduction to the Rite of Acceptance right in front of the Rite of Acceptance, and the introduction to the period of catechumenate in front of the period of catechumenate, the introduction and so on to the Rite of Election and so on.
So what were you?
So they moved the paragraphs around to accommodate that, and so the current English version does not exactly match the Editio Typica because we moved the paragraphs. The texts are the same, but they're all moved around in different places.
I know.
And you can see that.
Okay.
I don't know if you can see this here, but if you get out your